Hey, Lara here. So me and Daisy have a little sequence for you today. Yes, we do. That's all about strengthening the side of your body. Also really great if you've got knee stuff, glute stuff, lower back stuff. Great for evening out the psoas muscle if you know you've got some issues there. If you don't know what your psoas is, don't worry about it. Okay, Daisy, scooch. Come on. All right, so I'm gonna start with a little bit of lower back releasing and then go from there. Have the knees and ankles together, make a C with the spine, come down slowly. Once you're all the way there, walk the feet towards you, draw the knees towards your chest, take the hands to the shins, interlace the fingers, and start to rock from side to side. Think about lengthening the pubic bone away from the abdomen, squeezing the thighs, knees, and ankles. Start to make circles. Good, change direction with the circles, change the grip of the hands. And going side to side again. Then coming back to center, bringing the left foot to the floor, interlacing behind the right thigh, push the thigh into the hands, equally draw the shoulders toward their sockets, straightening the right knee as much as feels comfortable for you. Push your thigh into your hands, think right hip bone away from right armpit, pubic bone lengthening. Keep the shoulders engaged. And if you find this is very comfortable, left leg can straighten, but if you straighten this leg and this happens, better to focus on the right leg first. Concentrate on those outer hips, think about squeezing them together. We're gonna be finding a lot of strength in the glutes today. Five more breaths. Good, and bend your left knee, left foot to the floor, release your hands, cross right leg tightly over left. You can always pull the left calf toward you a little bit if you'd like. If you're fleshier in that area like me. Think outer hips squeezing together, pubic bone lengthening, hip bones equal distance from shoulders, equal distance from floor. If you genuinely need more, you're thinking pulling those inner thighs apart as you squeeze them together, outer trochanter squeezing, maybe you lift the left heel, maybe you lift the foot, hands combined behind legs. Push the thighs away from you, pull the upper arm bones back into their sockets. Active feet. And then left foot back to the ground, draw the right knee towards you, open up the back of the knee. Lower the right heel toward the floor, point your toes, lift your leg if it's easy, left leg straightens. 3 more. Good, and then bend both knees. Draw the left knee towards you, fingers interlace behind left thigh, left thumb and forefinger dominant. Push the thigh away from you, pull the upper arm bones into their sockets, think hip bones, equal distance from armpits, left leg straightens. If it's very, very comfortable, right leg also straightens. Concentrate on one spot or close the eyes. Think front of the thigh to the back of the thigh, calf lifting to the shin on both legs. Now bending the right knee, right foot to the floor in line with your right sit bone. Release your hands, tightly cross, left leg over right. You can use your right hand to pull the flesh of the left calf toward you a little if you like. Outer thighs squeezing, inner thighs pulling apart. Same with the lower leg. Pelvis tilting away from you, outer hips are hugging. As though you could hug your bones with your muscles. Sort of a funny way to put it, but it really does make sense after you've learned the connections. If you needed more, you could walk the right foot closer, you could lift your right heel, you could lift your foot, you could bind behind the thighs. Be left thumb and forefinger on top this time. Continue to find all those same connections. Upper arm bones draw into sockets. We don't want to lift the shoulders here. And right foot back to the ground. Left knee towards you. Open up the back of the knee. Lower that left heel towards the floor. Point your toes. Lift your leg if it's easy. Right leg also straight. Two more. Good. And then bend both knees. Now I want you to roll to your right hand side. You have two options. So option one is to bend your right elbow and have your hand resting at the base of the skull, kind of like Cleopatra. Or you can straighten out the right arm and have your ear resting on your shoulder. Either way, what you're looking for is to have your head in line with your shoulders, in line with your spine. You don't want your head further forward than the rest of your spine. You want to try to keep her stacked. It makes all the difference here. We're going to start with the knees perpendicular to the torso and the heels close to the buttocks. If you feel the knees at all, you can take the feet further away from the buttocks as needed. The outer edge of the right foot is pushing into the floor. You might be lifting your outer heel a little bit. You might be pushing or letting the whole edge of the foot touch the floor. Both are okay. Left hand is either on the left hip, and you want to try to notice, is that left hip going back and forward, or is it staying directly on top of the right? Or left hand is in front of you for support. Now I want you to lift the left knee, lower the left knee. Try to keep those hips completely stacked. If you need a little more, you can lift the feet slightly. And this one is great for strengthening the outer hips, the outer trochanter area. It's great for strengthening the groins, both inner and outer groins. Great for the glute muscles. And often, if the knees are cranky, this one will have a really positive effect. It's also a really common physiotherapy exercise, and it's part of a series called the side tensegrity series. Two more. And then lift and hold. Try to keep those feet active, spread your toes, keep the heels even, keep the toe mounds even, and lengthen the groins. Think outer knee into outer hip, lengthening inner groin to inner knee. As though you had a block between your thighs, but you were trying to pull your thighs away from it. Lower abdomen draws toward lower back. Just 5 more breaths. You can lift the knee a little more without taking the hip further back too. You can even have your hand behind your pelvis so you can notice, is that left hip going further back than the right? Good, and then lower the knee, take a brief rest. And that one can be really tricky, but if you do it regularly, you'll find a lot more symmetry in the sides of the body. One side is generally quite a bit stronger than the other, and this will create less of a discrepancy over time. All right, now I want you to straighten out your legs. And this one can be tricky, especially if you're a shorter human like me with wider hips, because your hips are gonna wanna roll back and forward. So I highly recommend having your hand in front of you for support, either the palm down or the fingertips down, depending on the length of the arm, because you want your shoulder to stack on top of the other. So if your palm is down and your shoulder comes forward, be on your fingertips. You could even put a block in front of you if you needed to. Now, as you glance down, you wanna be able to just see your toes. And you want to be able to have to bring your head forward in order to do so. You don't want your legs further forward than your torso. You don't want to be like a banana shape. You want to be nice and straight. Lift the outer right heel, have the fingertips or palm in front of you. Lift the left leg, lower the left leg. Now the tendency is to point the toes up and let the left hip go further back. We want to avoid that, keeping the toes pointing forward, keeping the hips stacked. The movement does not need to be big. And I promise you, if I use external rotation and just go as far as I can into flexibility, way overhead, right? But the stretch is different, right? Here we're trying to build strength. So we want to keep a slight internal rotation so that both knees are pointing exactly the way that our face is pointing. So no matter how far you go up, your knee is still pointing the same way as your other knee. You're leading with the outer left heel here. Lower abdomen draws toward lower back, and you're squeezing. squeezing those glutes. 2 more, and then we're gonna hold up. And remember, you can hold here. It does not matter where you go. You can hold here. You will get benefit. Hold wherever you can and pulse a little. Try to keep the face relaxed. Stop the pulsing and lower. Bend your knees a little, relax. Good, and then straightening the legs. Bend the left knee. Left foot can either come in front of your leg if you don't feel anything in your knee and it feels comfortable. You can either have your hand in front of you, or some people might want to hold on to the ankle. If that is not comfortable, you can have the foot behind your leg and the toes pointing the same way as the knee. So both are okay. All right. We try to keep the hips stacked as best we can, left on top of right, regardless of which option we go for. It's easier to keep the stacking if the leg is in front, but it is much more intense on the knee, of course. And so you should not feel anything in the knee. If you do, back off. Hands are in front of you. You're gonna lift the outer right heel, lower the outer heel. No momentum. So if you're swinging your leg up, not good. Keep the body still, go as slow as you can. And remember, you can change the positioning of the right arm as needed. Just if you do go for this version, try to have the elbow in line with the shoulder, in line with the torso. Try not to have the elbow further forward. And your palm can face down or up with that right arm. I think down is a little more comfortable personally. Try to take that lower abdomen back. And you'll be able to feel those outer hips working, outer spine of the body working. Just 2 more, and then we'll hold up. Good. Now see if you can draw some zeros. Small circles with that femur bone. Push into the left foot firmly. Change direction. Good work. And then pulse a few times. Good, and then rest all together. Let the knees be a little bent, stack them. And straightening out those legs. Again, you wanna look just to your toes, that's it. Lift the left leg a little and zeros with the leg. Try to keep the hips very, very still. Change direction. Focus on those hips remaining very still. Three more. And then from here, a little rest. Straighten out those legs, same. You want to just be able to see those toes if you looked forward. This time we're going to allow this leg to externally rotate. Hands in front. Lift the leg, let the external rotation happen, but keep the hips stacking. Try not to lose those hips stacking. And this might be your movement, right? It does not need to be big. And honestly, a smaller movement done with more integrity will be more difficult and will build you more strength. So even if you can go all I suggest not. I suggest doing less and concentrating on keeping the body still. Three more. And then holding up. Try to keep those hip bones stacking. Letting the toes point overhead. If you feel like you've got the balance, you can reach to the calf, the shin, the outer edge of the foot, if you fancy. But if you're losing the balance, back off, keep your hand in front of you for support. And then release, hands coming down, lower the leg. Good, once you've done so, bend your knees, ending just where we started rather. Heels right under the knees, okay? Knees stacking, feet right under knees. Thighs are perpendicular to the torso. Now you're gonna lift that left leg, take it forward, take it back. I always like to save this one for last because it requires the most integrity of movement. So once you've found it in the other positions, you can find it here. And your left hand can be on your hip like I'm demonstrating to make sure those hips are perfectly level, or if it's really difficult to start off, hands are in front of you. And you focus on keeping the hip, knee, and ankle the same distance from the floor with your mind. Lifting the outer right heel slightly, don't lift it too much. You can see I have a tendency to lift it too much. Just a little bit can go a long way. We want to create activity, energy in the legs and the feet, but we don't want tension. And often if you try too hard, you can create tension instead of release. Try to take it back 2 more times. And that last one, we're gonna hold it back for a quadricep stretch, so as release. Once you've gone as far back as you can, you're gonna hold there. You're gonna reach toward the for your foot or your ankle, the outer edge of that ankle with your hand. If you can't reach, use a strap or just hold the leg and you'll gain what you need hovering. Push your foot into the hand, draw the heel towards your seat perhaps. Think about drawing the lower abdomen toward the lower back. Don't lift that right heel too much, but keep it level. So you want the big toe mound and the inner heel equal distance from the ground. Think about lengthening the hip flexor toward the knee. Pardon me. Good, now releasing, slowly stack, relax. All right, now we switch sides. So push yourself up, adjust any adjustments you need to make, and then onto the left side. Now keep in mind, this side might feel completely different than the other. Be patient if that is the case. It might be a lot harder, it might be much easier. So listen to your body either way. And again, you can do the Cleopatra rest or the arm extended rest, whatever suits you more. This one, the straight arm tends to be more of an opening in the armpit area and the back of the shoulder as well, so keep that in mind. We're starting with the thighs perpendicular to the torso, the heels nice and close to the seat. If you have knee stuff, you feel the knees, bring the feet further away as needed. Outer left heel lifts. Right knee lifting, left knee remaining still. Inner edge of the foot is touching as you go, and you can spread the toes as much as you want. Hand can also be on the hip to try and resist that right hip going back. Because you'll notice the right hip will want to travel back, but that won't serve you as well. Better to keep The knees stacking, so as the knee comes down, the knees remain stacking. And if you notice, oh, when I come down, my knees are no longer level with one another. One knee, left knee is further forward than right. Then you know your right hip has gone further back than your left. So you want to focus on keeping that symmetry in the pelvis, even though you're doing an asymmetrical movement with the hip. And this one is great for strengthening the outer hips, the groins, and the psoas evenly. But particularly good for evening those glutes. 3 more, and then we'll hold open. Good, and then lifting to hold. Spread your toes, lengthen the inner groin to the inner knee, both legs, draw outer knee back into the outer hip without allowing that right hip to go further back than the right hip, we don't want it to go further back than the left. So whichever hip is on top, it has a tendency to go further back. We want to resist that, keeping them stacked and focusing on lengthening where we're tight. 5 more breaths. Abdomen drawing back, ribs drawing together and back. And you can even think of pulling the femur bones into the pelvis. Think of the outer trochanterus connecting a little more. You'll get even more. Sit bones can draw together a bit. All right, and then stacking. Relax for a moment. Good, and then go ahead and straighten out the legs. And what we want here is if we glance down, you can just see those toes. Same as on the other side. And if you feel too much on one side under the hip, the bone is cutting into the ground a bit, cutting into your nerves a bit, you can always fold up a blanket and put it under your hip. That'll do quite nicely. Try to keep the right hip on top of the left. Don't let it go back. Fingers are palm in front of you. Lifting the outer right heel, lowering. And again, you're focusing on keeping the hips stacking, thinking butt forward, thighs back, as though the glutes could work forward, the front of the thigh could work back. You're not letting external rotation happen. You're internally rotating, or it feels like an internal rotation to keep a neutral leg. So your knee and your toes of the right leg are always pointing the same way as your face. If you notice that your toes or your knee are pointing towards overhead or towards the ceiling, you know you are going too far and you're doing one of the other exercises rather than the one we're currently trying to work on. And this internal rotation, or what feels like an internal rotation as you lift and lower, strengthens the outer line of the leg very, very nicely. Incredibly good for those IT bands. If you've got sciatic nerve issues, this one's really nice as well. And you can always do it with a bent knee as well, right? It's always okay to do a bent knee. And that would look a little bit more like this. Very similar, right? Good, 2 more. And then lifting to hold. And like I said on the other side, you can play with pulsing a bit. Or you can remain still. Both are going to provide benefit. That's the beauty of it. No matter how much you do, it's always going to be helpful. And then lower nice and slow. Briefly relax everything. Good, and then 2 options for the next one. Right knee bends. You can either plant the right foot in front of you, maybe holding the ankle, maybe having the foot as it is. If this is not available, there's pain. Right foot is behind you and toes and knee are pointing in the same direction. And you're thinking hip stacking regardless of which one you go for. And if you do grab the ankle, shoulder shouldn't come ahead. Try to keep it stacking. Now from here, you're pushing into the feet, you're pushing into the hands, you're gonna lift the outer left leg up, left leg down. This one can get very dyslexic for me, so I apologize if the right and lefts are backwards sometimes. Think about taking the right knee away from you, right hip flexor away from right armpit. Lower abdomen, drawing toward the lower back. Remember, no momentum. The slower you go, the better. If you're using momentum, you won't build as much strength, as much flexibility. It's not worth it. Better not to rush. 3 more. And then holding up. Doing a few circles. And these add-ons are extras. You can always just hold it up. If it's challenging as it is, don't worry about adding the circles yet. Change direction, and then when you're ready to add more, you can. It's one of the best parts about a yoga practice is you've always got room to play, you've always got room to experiment, you've always got room to grow further and further. Good, and a little bit of pulsing. And the more you can keep the right leg still, the better. It will wiggle a little, at least in my body it does. Good. And resting. Let the legs relax for a moment. Good stuff. All right, from here, straightening the legs again, checking to make sure you can just see your toes, you're not getting a banana situation. And another way to check is the hip flexor area. Is there a big crease at the hip flexor? Or is it relatively flat from the hip or from the abdomen area to the thigh? And that doesn't mean you don't have an abdomen or you don't have a front of the thigh. It's just we're thinking thighs in line with spine. All right, so from here, you're gonna lift the right leg and think zeros. Focus on keeping the hips very still, squeezing the glutes, thinking butt forward, thighs back. Try to keep that right knee pointing the same way as the left knee, right toes pointing the same way as the left toes. Change direction and think small circles. Try to resist those hips from wobbling. Push into the outer left foot firmly. You can lift the outer heel here a little if you fancy. I find it can make it a little more stable. And this will start to recruit the outer left side of the body as well as the right side, of course. Good. And then rest. Straightening out. Finding your legs. This time we're going to allow the right leg to externally rotate. Hand in front of you for support. Let the toes point a bit out and up. And then slowly lift the leg. Slowly lower the leg. Returning to neutral as you lower. Letting the toes point a bit out. And then toes pointing forward, right? Try not to let the right hip go further back than the left. And as you come down, think about reaching with that right leg so the feet are stacked, the toes are together. Right shoulder, try not to let it come further forward than the left. And it does not matter how big the movement is, it can look like this. And you'll be amazed by what just lifting and lowering an incremental amount, a tiny amount, can do. 5 more. And then when you get to that last one, you're going to bring it up as far as feels appropriate for you. Hip bones stacking. And then if it feels comfy to grab your shin, your ankle, your foot, then you can. Shoulders into sockets. femur bones into sockets, lower abdomen toward lower back. And you can hold anywhere on the leg, right? Doesn't matter where. Five more breaths. And then releasing. Good. And last one, bending the knees again. Have the knees in line with the torso. You've got a 90-degree angle with the thighs in relation to the torso. Feet, instead of being close to the seat, they're right underneath the knees. So you've got a 90-degree angle knee, 90-degree angle hip. All right? Fingertips in front of you for support, or hand on hip for support. We're trying to keep the right hip bone directly on top of the left hip bone, the knees stacking, the ankles stacking. Lift the right leg so that your knee, ankle, and hip are same distance from the ground. Trying not to let any one joint be higher than any other. Take hip bone away from armpit as you draw the thigh toward you, and hip flexor away from armpit still as you go back. Push into the outer left heel as you go. Think active foot, but no tension in the foot. Like I said, I really like doing this one last. You can do it earlier if you want to, but I find it's nicer if the hips have warmed up a little bit more. Try to keep the right foot consistent, the left foot consistent. Press the outer left thigh, outer left knee toward the floor without forcing. Three more. And on that third one, we're going to take the leg as far back as we can and either hold hanging out there, or we're going to bring our hand to clasp the foot. So if it's feeling great, you can grab the ankle, foot pointed or flexed. Pointed is more intense and harder on the knee. Flexed is easier on the knee, I find, at least in my body. You're going to push your foot into your hand, lift the abdomen away from the hip flexor, and take the thigh back, as though you're pushing your knee into a button. Make sure the left heel is not lifting too high, but it's only as high as the big toe mound. No tension in your neck, holding here, abdomen toward lower back. Knee not higher or lower than hip, right in line. Five more breaths. And releasing, flex the foot. Stack the legs, relax. Good. And then come onto your back, rolling there slowly. Have the feet and knees together, extend the arms, wrists in line with shoulders, push into your feet, lift your hips, take them to your right. If you want more rather than less, you'll cross right leg on top. If there is, and you can draw the flesh of the calf toward you a little if you like. If there's no knee stuff happening, you can cross your ankles. Otherwise, don't cross the ankles. If there's knee stuff happening, you don't have to cross your knees either. You can leave them as they are. Either way, you're going to push into the arms, draw the abdomen in and up, and slowly bring your knees toward your left side. If the knees don't quite touch the floor, you can always stack a bolster, some books, a firm blanket, whatever underneath those knees for less intensity. For more, from here, you're going to bend your left elbow, push into that left elbow, lift the left shoulder, slide it to the left ribs will move too, and the skull will follow. And then go ahead and extend the arms, think external rotation, elbows press into floor, active fingers, slight bend in the knuckles as you spread them, and reach the elbows apart. If there's space, both shoulders are down, then you can look to your right side.
10 more breaths. And if you start to feel any pain in the knees, too much sensation in the back, or any pain in the back, you start by uncrossing ankles and squeezing legs still, or you can uncross the knees and stack the knees on top of one another. Trying to keep the knees and the toes stacking. Now to come out, you'll bring your gaze back to center. You'll uncross the legs if they're not uncrossed yet. You'll squeeze the legs together. You'll fire up the abdomen, and you'll bring the legs to center. Once you're back in center, you'll straighten out the spine, making sure hips are 100% in line with torso. And then from here, you'll extend the arms, push into the feet, take the hips to your left, maybe cross left leg on top, maybe not, maybe hook ankles, maybe not, and then knees come down to the right side this time. And you can support the knees if you fancy, that's perfectly fine. It's a great option, especially if the left shoulder lifts initially. If you need more, right elbow bends, lift the right shoulder, tuck it under, slide the right ribs to the right, bring the head over as well. If you end up too close to a wall like I did, you can always bend that right elbow or bend one elbow and have a 90-degree angle, like a cactus arm. Or if you happen to be, in a smaller space and you just don't have room to extend your arms, that's a good option. Because either way, you're trying to lengthen the elbows here, whether the arms are straight or not. If you're feeling like there's space, then the gaze turns to the right. Otherwise, we keep the gaze at the ceiling. And we're thinking lower abdomen toward lower back, outer thighs squeezing together, inner thighs pulling apart. If you were to feel too much at any point, you would start by uncrossing the ankles, still squeezing those legs, and then maybe even uncrossing the knees, keeping the feet and the knees stacking. Now the trick is, you never want to be without muscular support here. So in a deep twist such as this, or in any twist of any sort, you want the hips, the thighs, the lower back, the core muscles, all to be contributing to the effort, so that no one joint has too much pressure exerted on it. When you're ready to come out, you'll bring your gaze to center, you'll fire up the legs, you'll bring the legs back to center, and you'll straighten out the spine. Once you're all the way back, feel free to hug the knees, make a few circles, and then bringing the feet to the ground. When you're ready to, it's time for Shavasana. Extending the legs, extending the arms, letting the toes and fingers relax, closing the eyes, and concentrating on your body from the inside. With every exhalation, allow your body to sink that much more deeply into the floor. Allow yourself to become that much more still, that much more free of tension. Whenever you notice the urge to fidget and move the body, resist it. Bring your attention back to every exhalation. And slowly beginning to deepen your breathing, waking the body from the inside, opening and closing the eyes, moving the fingers and toes, taking a stretch with the arms overhead, and starting to bend your knees and walk your feet towards you. Rolling to the side to push yourself up and coming into a comfortable seated position. And then from here, we'll finish by a little group home. Deep breath in. Thank you so much for sharing your yoga. Namaste.